producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. Very pleased to welcome another old friend this evening, the city manager of Oshkosh, Mr. Mark Rohloff. Nice
Hi,
to have
Cheryl.
you here. You were scheduled one other time earlier in the year, just a few weeks ago, and your son had a play. How did it go?
Oh, it went wonderful. He was
Yeah.
Buddy and Elf Jr., so we were quite excited, very proud. So
There you go.
So thanks for cutting me some slack and giving me till tonight.
Sure, no problem. In fact, that was just a week ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, okay. And that was also the night of the holiday parades, so...
A lot of competition.
Yeah, yeah. So we probably wouldn't have been able to tape that night anyway. So that's in fact why we're taping two shows tonight. So, but anyway, I'm glad that he did a good job, and he's heading for Broadway next, right?
Well, you know, maybe Oshkosh West. Well, let's go there first.
All right. I want to talk right out of the chute about the budget, because that's probably first and foremost on your mind, I would think, and the council's mind. And I know tax bills come out probably like in about 3 or 4 weeks from now. And so it's on the minds of all of us taxpayers, too. What they've been having some budget hearings and council meetings where the budget's been discussed. The budget hasn't been approved yet, though, right?
Right. It'll be approved on November 24th, so depending on when somebody's listening to the show, they'll know it by then. But the council has had 6 different workshops plus
Wow.
a public hearing. They started the workshops back in July, 3 before the budget was submitted, and then to give staff and myself some input and advice on things they'd like to see in the budget, and us giving them an opportunity to kind of set the table, as it were. And then 3 after the budget was submitted to them, so they could get into more details, ask questions, and some really good discussions took place, and not a ton of input at the public hearings. Disappointing after all that work, but
Sure.
you know, the people that do come, they're very serious about it, and we like to listen to what they have to say.
Sure. Now, of course, all the department heads have to be there. Any big surprises or cuts to some departments?
Not necessarily this year. There are 2 things, one good, one bad in general. Let me do the bad first, because I always like to end on that note.
Yeah.
The state continues to cut aid that goes to municipalities. There's a program called shared revenue, and I think the word shared needs to be re-emphasized, because what that is, it's all the revenue that the state collects. The state collects all the sales tax that you and I pay when we go to the store and buy something. The city doesn't get any of that directly. It's redistributed to all the cities and villages and towns after the state collects it. And that program has been either frozen or declined for the last 25 years. And so that every time that's reduced, then local taxes need to supplant that, or fees and charges. And you know very well how fees and charges have grown, but it's partially because of these cuts. Shared revenue, fortunately, was just frozen. So one of the themes we've been talking about is zero's the new increase. If you get a 0, it's as good as an increase was in the past. But there have been some reductions as well. There's the state recycling program, which reimburses municipalities for costs that the state collects. When we go to the landfill with the recyclables, there is a fee that's paid by us for each ton of recyclables that we leave there. the state is not reimbursing us the same amount. In fact, they got cut by 20%.
Wow.
And so that was a $50,000 cut right there. So there are those revenues. Transit revenues, we're projecting combination of state and federal aid. That's going down. So every time those go down, the local match has to go up. For example, with transit, when I got here in 2008, we were getting about 62% of transit costs covered by state and federal. Now we're projecting 54%. And even our transportation director, Jim Collins, is saying that's somewhat optimistic. So it could even be less than that. So we've lost 8% of that program over the past 7 years. And when you think about who that benefits, it benefits students, seniors, handicapped folks. That's a real hit to them. And we increased, as you know, back in 2008, we increased the transit fare to $1, and there was a big uprising over that. And that's because those are folks who are traditionally on fixed incomes. We haven't raised that rate. We have the lowest transit fare in the state for cities of our size, roughly. So the taxpayers are paying for that. So that's where our other alternative is to fund these programs. So property taxes or fees are used to increase these fees. Now that's all the bad news, and you can ask me later because I could go on, but that's the reality of what happens. And so fortunately this year, the council directed us, and I think some of them said, "I told you so, Mark." We did some digging, and we found some options for health insurance that are going to save us about 15%, about $1.3 million that we're going to save on health insurance. That's a real dollar decrease. That is helping a whole bunch when you think of how much we're getting cut in some of these other areas. That $1.5 million savings essentially helped us out for the coming year on the expenditure side. So we were very fortunate. So there are no major reductions in service. The tax rate, which is obviously the tax rate's going up due to some of these revenue cuts, but there are no significant cuts in service. And in fact, we're, as one possible option, looking at the option of adding a police officer. On the operational side, we cut a position, and this is where I gotta brag about this one, because the public deserves credit for trusting us, the council deserves credit for trusting us, and my employees get a lot of credit. We have gotten very good at our automated refuse and recycling. You know, you start out, it's a pretty slow process to get used to it. Our folks have gotten so efficient over the 5 years, they came into the budget and said, "Mark, we don't need a position." They just gave it to me. And I can't tell you, I darn near cried, because they saw the savings, they saw the efficiencies, and they said, we can get this done with 1/2 route less because we're that much more efficient than we were when we started 5 years ago. Bob Salm is our new sanitation manager, and he came in with that, and I'm telling you, Cheryl, my jaw almost dropped. And I'm so proud, and so I want to let everybody know that that's what our folks do. They look for efficiencies, and then they make suggestions. And sometimes I'm saying, what can you offer? I didn't even have to ask. They just did it. So they are looking, they are dedicated, and they do look for ways to save money. You don't always hear that, but I want to make sure that I'm loud and proud about that one.
Sure, absolutely. So let's repeat it again. It's one person less?
One person less.
Okay.
In fact, they held the position open for the past few months because they already knew they had the efficiencies. They've gotten that good at that little joystick in the truck, and they can knock those trucks out, those garbage cans out just like that. It's very efficient. It was a very wise investment. So this is the dividend that the residents deserve for trusting us to invest in those trucks. Remember, there were a lot of complaints.
There were. So what does this equate to in terms of dollars?
You're probably looking at about $70,000 a year easily in savings, and that includes benefits, but it's probably in that neighborhood, could be as high as 80, but just a wonderful windfall for for the taxpayers that we were able to do that.
So, but I can hear taxpayers out there right now, you know, saying, okay, $70,000 to $80,000 a year. We paid how many millions for the new trucks, and we all had to kick in money for the bins, and you know. So, how would you respond to those folks?
I would say that, number one, we reduced staff immediately, so we got some savings. And the fact that we've gotten better, that's helped improve things. We're doing with about easily a third of the staff we used to do it.
Okay.
So that payback.
That's some savings.
That's real. And I'm just adding that now we had another dividend after the immediate reduction. Because we used to run 2-person trucks. Now we have a 1-person truck, and we've actually cut out a half route on recycling and a half route on refuse to get 1 person.
Sure, that's excellent. I want to go back for just a moment and talk about the transit monies, because this was one of my things. Governor Walker yesterday approved just over $3.8 million in funds to improve transportation needs for people who are seniors or who are handicapped in some way. And I looked at and that was an increase over last year of about 9%. And I was looking through the list before I came over here tonight of all the municipalities and the independent agencies and so forth that got some of that grant money. Oshkosh and Winnebago County weren't, and no organization or agency from this area was even in there. Why would that be? I mean, do we not have transit problems here, or did we not apply for a grant, or did we apply for grant money and it wasn't accepted, or what happened there?
I wish I could tell you. I didn't have an opportunity to read that press release, so I don't know if there was a limited what the program was for, to be honest with you. So now I don't necessarily know the answer. I'll have to check that out.
Okay.
Normally we're pretty assertive about looking for grants, so it depends on what it was for, if it went to larger cities or the focus was on smaller. I just don't know what
A lot of it, I think, seemed to be smaller, but I'm not sure if there were bigger cities. I think there might have been some bigger cities in there, too.
We know that one of the things that we really need to pursue are grants for capital replacement. There must have been a big group of grants that were awarded in the early 2000s, and we purchased about 10 buses over a very short period of time. Now, of course, they're all starting to come due, and we don't have the money to replace all of them, so we're kind of replacing the worst first. And we're looking at potentially having to replace 10 buses over the next 3, 4, 5 years, and that's really going to pinch us because the grant money that we got years ago to replace them is no longer there. We're lucky if we get 1 bus every other year. So obviously it wasn't for that, because we've been standing in line waiting for those grants, and we apply for 2 and we get 0 or 1. That's pretty much what we've been granted in terms of buses. And so now that those buses are starting to show their age, it's becoming an issue.
Sure. What you said, the tax rate's going up. So when we see our tax bill in December, and of course the city is just one part of it, then you've got the county, and you've got the, you know, the school system, in both local for the Oshkosh Area School District, and then you've got the UW system.
Fox Valley Tech is the school system. UW doesn't get any property tax money. Fox Valley Tech does, though.
Okay, all right. So there's all these different entities listed on the tax bill. What is it going to, I know when you were here last time, you said that you thought Oshkosh would probably would be getting a little bit of a reprieve. Do you still think that?
Overall, yes. But specifically with the city, I have to be full disclosure, ours is going up because of those revenue cuts.
Okay.
Library's losing a lot of revenue. A museum has lost some revenues. The library has been losing aid from the counties and from other entities. We had to increase the library's levy, just the library, by $175,000. Our levy is going up about 900, it's under $1 million, but it's going up about $900,000 or so. Well, 20% of that's library, and that's not because the library expenditures have gone up, the revenue's gone down. So that's a long way of answering your question. Our tax rate for just the city is going up 20 cents. Literally, before I walked in here, I was down the hall, and our finance director, Trina Larson, was burning the midnight oil, and she reported that the state tax credit is going up. So the state has been, while they haven't been giving us extra revenue, they've been increasing the credit, so it's sort of a back-ended reduction in property taxes. I would prefer they would just give it to us, but they're giving it to the taxpayer at the bottom line. The taxpayer's happy, I'm happy. Sure. Overall, the tax rate's going to go down about 32 cents, and that's even after our increase. The state credit's going up about 30 cents, and the schools and the county are going down a total of about 26. So it nets out to about a 32 cent per thousand reduction. So if you have a $100,000 house, your tax bill will likely be about $32 less than it was the year before. But it's not, I can't take credit for that, although when people get the tax bill, because it comes from us, we either get the credit or the blame. So we'll get credit. We don't deserve the credit this year. But there have been years where it's gone up and we've gone down, and we've gotten yelled at that. So you just take, I think people want to take the overall bill. We're doing everything we can. It's like the things I talked about, but it's still up about 20 cents on our side. But overall, if you had a $100,000 house, you'll see about a $32 reduction.
Okay, well, that's good news to anybody. I don't care where they are. So were there any specific challenges with this budget, other than the overall challenge of trying to find money where there isn't any, you know?
Fortunately, like I mentioned earlier, health insurance helped a lot.
Yeah.
The challenges are these funds, these departments that are supposed to be funded by some dedicated revenue sources, and only a little subsidy from the taxpayers. Library, all that aid going down, that's $175,000. It was another $100,000 with the museum, and that was even after a very successful year with the Lego exhibit that they had, and even with all those wonderful stories, they still had reductions in revenues that they received. And transit, of course, as I already mentioned, those funds really hit us pretty hard. Meanwhile, we're still governed by collective bargaining agreements. Our increases on public safety are 2.75, and those were negotiated and everything, but they still hit us. And when you have reductions in state aid and you have collective bargaining increases of 2 for transit, 2.75 for public safety, plus 2% for non-represented, the overall increase in our budget percent-wise is only a little over 2%. But when you've got these revenues down, our levy is going up about 2.7, 2.8%, depending on where council ultimately decides on it on Tuesday.
Sure.
So because of the reductions in other aids, the property taxes go up to offset it. I would love to keep that percent of increase in the tax rate to kind of stay in the same wavelength. But the last few years, the gap's been growing, and that's a challenge. And for people who are paying property tax bills, they're not going to be very happy, and I certainly understand that.
Sure. And you're one of them.
Yeah, exactly.
You're one of them.
I don't like getting that letter from me. I know what's in it already.
So I want to talk about one of the amendments that Councilman Ben Stepanek tried to make to the budget at last council meeting. It was... gosh, I don't remember what the dollar amount was, but it was for a full-time diversity and inclusion coordinator, which is something that the city of Appleton has had for a while and has turned out to be a very successful position for that community. Councilors kind of rejected it because, you know, it was kind of coming late in the game. But overall, do you see that? I mean, they've directed you to consider that for next year. Do you see that as something that will be happening when we look at the 2017 budget?
Yeah, I can't say if I think it'll happen or not. That's always a council decision. But I think if you take a look at what's going on around the country, that this discussion is rising to the top, and I think that's why we have to look at it. We have to look at it, what it means for Oshkosh. What it means for Oshkosh and what it would mean for another community are two different things. It has to be the right time. I think there are enough organizations and entities out there that are seeing a growing need for that. The university has already done something like that. Yep. I think we need to look at how the community may need this, not just the city. Appleton has done it for the city. Some communities actually have done it at the city level, but they provide diversity education services to businesses and things like that. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be received well. Oshkosh Corporation, for example, has a diversity coordinator already on board in their organization because of everything that they're doing. They're a multinational company. They have been on that train for a long time. So they may not need it. And other businesses may not see the value. Why do I need to do this? I only have 5 employees. Things like that. So I think we first need to look at best practices. What are other people doing with these types of positions? And are there opportunities to either share the position or how it would be used across the community, not just in the city?
Right, and that was on my list, you know. I mean, the city shares, isn't it a health department that we share with Neenah, for example?
We all share with the county. It's done everything. So we have City of Oshkosh, City of Neenah, and Winnebago County have a joint health department. So can we share that type of position, and if so, how? And then who would pay for it? We just did a health clinic for our employees with the school district and the county. I think that's part of the reason our reductions there. So are there opportunities to do that? Because when you're talking about diversity, it's about training employees. It's about affirmative action in terms of hiring and recruiting of employees to of diverse backgrounds. How do we do that? How do we best do that? Purchasing, making sure that minority and disadvantaged businesses have an opportunity to get in on city contracts and bid on it and actually be competitive. It's all of those things. I'd like to learn more about it, and I think Councilman Stepanek threw it out there. Some thought it was a little late in the game, but Council's given me 2 directives, and that's one of them. And that's already, even before they give me my goals for the year, it's like, I got it, diversity coordinator, let's investigate that. So we're going to do that and see what happens.
You mentioned about minorities, you know, and small type businesses, which of course are minorities, getting in on city contracts. Do we have, I have an interest in this because I write a lot of articles for an out-of-state publisher on this very kind of thing. Does the city have like a quota or a set-aside that must be given on city contracts to small and minority-owned businesses?
No, we don't. So those are the types of things that we would look at and say, what's going to be effective? You know, first we have to find out how many minority or disadvantaged business enterprises are out there. I think a lot of it is reaching out, finding out who and where they are, and then educating them that there's business to be had in the city. And if you're a taxpayer in the city, number one, I want you to be bidding on things. And then if you're a minority or women-owned or disadvantaged business, we want to know about that too.
Or veteran-owned.
Yeah, any of those things, because diversity has many different shades and colors. It's not just about, you know, African American or Hispanic. It's all diverse cultures. It's also, you know, sexual orientation, things like that. Those are all the things we have to take a look at, and it's got to be acceptable to the city. Culturally, I think we're evolving and we're getting there, and so education and really showing the advantages of why. And one of the things I've learned with watching what Oshkosh Corporation has been doing to get federal contracts, they recognize they need to attract people into our community from outside because our unemployment rate is pretty low. So when they start hiring, assuming they get the new contract, they're going to be looking to attract people from outside the community to come into our community. And people are going to be looking for acceptance. And it doesn't matter, it's general acceptance or acceptance of me as a specific group. We need to demonstrate that you're welcome. The welcome mat is out. We're going to be friendly and we're going to meet your needs, and that's what we really have to do it.
And that's why I think the diversity inclusion coordinator is so important, you know, because it's not just about what Oshkosh Corp is doing, for example, but, you know, and I just want to say kind of as a side note also to, anyone who is a veteran-owned business, women-owned business, you know, minority-owned business from a color standpoint, whatever it might be, like we've been talking about here, there are tons and tons and tons of federal contracting opportunities. And, you know, if you want information on that, all you have to do is go to the Small Business Administration and under their section on federal contracting, and oh my word, there are so many opportunities. You know, it's not just something on a local basis or a state basis. So, and it doesn't matter what your business is, so I would encourage you to look at that. Let's talk a little bit about capital improvements budget. What is that budget? Where is that? Where does that stand now?
Well, we're holding steady pretty much on that. You know, the first few years I was here after the floods of '08, and the directive was, let's get projects done. And the analogy I'm using is, you know, we hit the gas, we hit it hard, we started going out. We were doing 2 major stormwater pond projects a year, plus a lot of storm sewer projects, and we went all out. As we started to look at the financial impact, we said we got to ease off the gas. Not completely hit the brakes, but we've got to ease up. We've got ourselves back down to 1 major storm pond type project a year, along with the street projects that include storm sewer. That's council has directed us to limit our general obligation borrowing to $11.4 million a year. So we've got that, and pretty much a full third of that is dedicated towards street improvements, and then the remaining 2/3 are for non-street improvements, parks, public facilities, community development, those types of things. So, but we have to live within our means, and we know that there's a threshold about how much we can borrow according to the state. It's 5% of our equalized value. We really need to be at 70% of that cap, so really more about 3.5% of our equalized value, and we're probably about 3/4 of that cap as opposed to 70%. That doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot. And the council wants us to get down, and they've given me direction to get that amount down. We've developed a 10-year plan. If we can hold that borrowing at $11.4 million, by the end of the decade we'll be at 70%, and we'll need to hold that $11.4 million to maintain that level for the remainder of the decade that the council laid out for us. So we've done it. We've made progress on it. I'm very proud of that, but we have to hold our own. And
Sure.
The council had a few little temptations, and as we were discussing capital projects, well, if you really want to do that project, you could go off of your $11.4 million pledge. No. Okay, I heard you. I mean, they were very polite. I mean, you can watch all the workshops. It was like, no, we don't want to do that, Mark. Good. Am I testing the water? Yes. Not necessarily to push them over and say, okay, spend more than 11.4, but what's your sensitivity? Their sensitivity is really high. They don't want to go over 11.4. So it kind of makes it easy for me in some respects, because it's like, I know the number I have to deliver to the council. Now, it's hard to get down to that number because I have to say no to a lot of very worthwhile projects, but at least we know going in, council said 11.4 million, that's what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm. What is our borrowing rate right now, our rating?
Our borrowing rating is a AA3. Now there's AA, there's A, and then there's BAA. So we're in the middle. We're kind of near the lower end of the top rung. We used to be AA2 with all the borrowing we did. I think Moody's Investor Service, which does our rating, they were a little spooked by what was going on in Oshkosh Corp. So I'm going to make sure I point that out when we get rated next time. And property value is part of it. So that's a huge issue that we have we have to improve our property values in order to get our borrowing rating improved. It's, you know, the sort of the mantra with real estate: location, location, location. Mm-hmm. With borrowing at the municipal level, it's property value, property value, property value.
Right. And, you know, how do you improve property value? You know, when so many of our citizens are on a limited income, you know, and they can't maybe afford to fix up their homes, which would in turn increase their property value and that kind of thing. So what is the answer to that?
Well, the answer is to grow our property tax base with more more people, more businesses, take advantage of the Highway 41 corridor, and then reinvesting in our neighborhoods. We want to make our neighborhoods places of choice. The demographics say that younger people are interested in getting into being close to work and all the amenities that a municipality, a city provides. They call it cool cities. I like that term because I want to believe that we're trying to be cool, but the reality is we have to make it, we have to make these places safe and clean and secure. You know, busy young working adults don't want to go and have to fix a roof on a Saturday morning. They want to go out and have fun. So we need to make our neighborhoods more attractive. That's why we're doing a lot of those neighborhood associations, because home ownership is the #1 indicator of a vibrancy of a neighborhood. That's Mark's opinion. That's not anything else. But you talk to other people, the people who do the research on it, they're going to tell you home ownership is where you'll get property values maintained or going up. Sure. Because you and I are neighbors, we're both homeowners. The old keeping up with the Joneses. Mm-hmm. You paint your house, I start looking at mine saying, oh boy, I better keep up with Cheryl. I mean, it sounds silly, but it is so true. Yeah. Because people want to be like their neighbors. They want to maintain their properties. And when you show pride, I want to demonstrate that same pride in my house. And it does, and that's the old analogy of the rising tide raises all ships.
A classic example of keeping up with the Joneses is during the summer months when it comes time to mow the lawns. You know, your neighbor mows their lawn, and you right away think, oh, geez, now I got to get out there and mow mine because now mine looks like crap because it's maybe not overgrown, but now that theirs is freshly groomed and manicured, you got to get everyone else in line, you know?
And then the opposite occurs, and that's what we're trying to avoid. The police will tell you that, when you have a gang tag, and we don't have a lot of that in town, thank goodness, but when you have a gang tag, if you don't clean that up right away, then somebody's going to say, well, then nobody cares, so something happens over here, and maybe I'm not going to worry about my lawn because this guy isn't doing this or this woman isn't doing that, and then all of a sudden it goes the opposite way. It's that death spiral. Yeah. We need to instill pride in neighborhoods, and if there's somebody who is willing to invest in a house that's pretty run down, we better make sure that we earn their trust, and we gotta do more code enforcement. We have to demonstrate to people, not just by saying it, but by actually doing it, that we're going to stand up for their investment in their property by making sure that other people are also maintaining it. So it's not forcing them to keep up with the Joneses, but if they're not meeting a certain standard, we've got to do more code enforcement, and that's an initiative in the neighborhoods that we really have to focus on.
Sure. You mentioned neighborhood associations. How many do we have right now in Oshkosh?
We are up to 9.
Okay.
And we only have one south of the river, which kind of disappoints me, but the neighbors have got to come to their own conclusion that they need it. The Marina District, which is the area right along Sawyer, east of Sawyer, south of Highway 21. That area has developed a neighborhood association. They're kind of fledgling right now, but they're picking up some steam. That's the only south side neighborhood we have. So we have 8 others on the north side. Some are very active. Some are moderately active. Trying to get them to community pride is a huge part of it. So we engage them. We have some funds for capital improvements that are neighborhood specific. So we have funds, and the neighbors meet and they decide what we really think we need for this neighborhood is, and then they tell us what it is. We look at it, make sure it's an appropriate improvement. But parks and statues, things of pride, have been the things that have been really important. We thought maybe streets would be, signage is something, so that gives that neighborhood identity. A lot of the neighbors have done that, and so much so that we just said, well, we're just going to do that all the time now. We're not even going to, we're going to say, how do you want your little design to it, but name your neighborhood, things like that. But the neighbors really want the parks, the community centers to be their identity. So a lot of the parks have had little things like a playground or a community garden like in Stevens Park. The wonderful pocket park that was done in Middle Village. And I have to say, I fought that for the longest time. And you know, you got to stand corrected when I'm willing to eat my words, because the neighbors there delivered. They said they would maintain it. They've been maintaining it. There's a lot of pride, and I'm very proud of what the folks in Middle Village have done to get that neighborhood going, and our staff has been just wonderful as well.
Sure. If people go on the city website, Mark, can they see where these associations are?
Yes, just go look at the community development website, and you can. And if you're interested in maybe either getting involved in the neighborhood, you can find that out. Or if you're interested in forming a neighborhood association, there's Liz Williams or Alexa Najunas. Both of them are planners in our planning division. They'll help you walk you through the process of what it takes to get a neighborhood association started.
Sure. You know, and it's not like a homeowners association where there's dues and that kind of thing. That's not what we're talking about here, right? Correct.
It's really just about getting together, getting to know each other. We try to bring in whatever resources of the city you think you need. So if you're concerned about crime or crime prevention, we'll bring the police department in. If you're interested in parks, we'll make sure the parks department's there. Planning is there a lot because there's so many things that cross-reference with them.
Sure.
Code enforcement. Things you want to get done in your neighborhood, will bring the right people to the meeting to help you do whatever you want to do. The Millers Bay area really picked up on wanting to do a park, but it was really the playground at Emmeline Cook Elementary. So we've partnered with the school district, and the school district was there, and they had some funds that they wanted to put in to improve the playground there because it was pretty rough shape.
Sure.
But the neighbor said, well, that's our center. That's our anchor for our neighborhood. So we're assisting them with some of the city funds along with school district funds, and then they've raised funds on their own. And what a wonderful addition to the neighborhood. It's instilling a lot of neighborhood pride, and that's what this is about. You gotta, if you're proud of your neighborhood, you're gonna take better care of your house. If you take better care of your house, your neighbors will. It's that cumulative effect of everything going on.
Sure.
I'm really excited about it, as you can tell.
Yes, yes. Well, you're always excited about, about almost anything. I don't think I've ever seen you where you're not excited about something. I mean, you love your work, you love this community, and that's so clearly shown, I think, Mark, by your excitement. You're an exuberant guy. I get a lot of inspiration from people in the community. And when I first got here, I was talking to Stu Rickman at the newspaper, and I said, why is everybody so down on themselves? And so you take a look at some of the wonderful things we have in our community, and there's a lot to be proud of. Yes. So that's what we do. And if Stu called me one time the cheerleader in chief, okay, I don't know if you'd want to see me in a skirt, but I'm willing to be that, because I think that helps bring up a community. And there are so many wonderful things that we can bring to the table that I'm going to be cheering about it till the cows come home. Sure. Now, the neighborhood associations, I'm just kind of sitting here thinking, okay, why are there 8 that are on the other side of the river and only 1 on the south side of the river? And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it because we've got a lot of the older housing stock that's on the other side of the river, and it has fallen in some disrepair in some of the neighborhoods because the people are elderly and on fixed incomes? I mean, is that a true kind of statement? I mean, not to, put anybody down, but we do have a lot of older housing stock there. Whether the people are on fixed incomes or not, that is where a lot of the older housing is. I wish I knew the full answer. And, I'm always cautious about answering that question because I certainly don't want to make people think that either we don't care or that we think they don't care. Sometimes critical mass gets it going. And when we started to do the neighborhood associations, it was really in the aftermath of the Near East neighborhood, and there was a lot of controversy around it. And the philosophy that we really looked at as we analyzed what went wrong
It was engagement by the neighborhoods. It was instead of being a top-down thing from the city, it needed to be a bottom-up. We're going to be there when the neighbors realize that, yeah, we have a need for something like this. And somebody asked me one time, well, why don't you have any on the south side? And I really wanted to turn around and say, I don't know, why? You answer my question. You know, I jokingly was telling somebody, we must have rugged individualists on the south side because they don't need a neighborhood association, but individually you don't need a neighborhood association. As a community, do you want a neighborhood association? And as these other neighborhood associations start to evolve, there might be some groundswell of support. We'll get them. You know, community development staff know that I want to get some Southside Neighborhood Association started, and I think I've eyeballed a couple people out there who I think I might be approaching. I'm not going to tell them on the air tonight, but I'm coming for you.
So, about how many households can make up an association?
You know,
I mean, are we talking little nucleuses, or are we talking a several block-wide area?
It really is more of a qualitative thing. There's no size minimum or size maximum. One neighborhood association just recently decided to split in two, not because there was some big fight or anything. They just said, you know, we're going to be a little more manageable if we do this and this. And we're like, okay, that makes sense. So there's no real magic size. We don't have, you know, one of the sociology professors at the university did a little bit of research and said, you know, we really don't have any neighborhoods per se. So that lack of identity, I think, kind of prevents people from getting started, because if you said, I want to start a neighborhood association in your neighborhood, well, first thing, define your neighborhood.
Yeah.
Everybody has different answers to that.
And that's why nobody can decide what a neighborhood school is either.
Yeah, and,
you know,
and the boundaries have moved over the years, so
right.
It's like, I used to be here, now I'm there, so you lose your identity, and you know, that's certainly a part of it. So that's why it has to be more organic, and it, you know, you got to be natural about it. So we're open to any suggestions, and it's not like you're developing a political boundary. So what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And the Menominee South neighborhood is on the south side of Menominee Park. Millers Bay is on the north side. And there's an area in between. Central Menominee, I don't know, you call it whatever you want, but there's no neighborhood association there. I'm sure one will develop over time, but it's got to come to the neighbors naturally.
Sure.
I hope it's more of a positive thing rather than a reactive, we got to prevent crime or prevent this or that, because you really do want it to be a more positive thing.
Well, and it's a way of getting to know your neighbors also, I suppose. And, you know, that's always a good thing, because I'm sure you grew up in the same kind of neighborhood I did, where everybody knew each other, everybody watched out for one another. You'd get together and play cards or whatever. And, you know, we've lost that kind of neighborhood rapport, if you will. Everybody has fences these days, and I've got no problem with fences. I've got one. But, you know, that doesn't mean that you still can't get to know your neighbors and be friendly with them and have block parties or whatever the situation may be. But you talk about neighborhoods losing their identity. I grew up on the west side. Well, the west side now is where?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, when I was a kid growing up, Oakwood Road, for example, was out in the country. And it's not anymore, you know, and it seemed like a far way out in the country on sometimes, some weeks, you know, some days. But it just, I don't know. Now it's, I mean, we've got hospitals along Oakwood Road, and so I don't know. But I understand what you mean about neighborhoods losing their identity, because I think when you just say the west side, yeah, it's lost its identity.
Yeah.
What is the west side anymore? It's everywhere. Want to talk real quickly, because we're running out of time, about a couple of things. Fall yard waste collection is now done as far as picking up loose leaves.
The big vacuum,
on the
big
lawn.
elephant nose vacuum
Yep.
will be ending probably by the time the show airs.
By the time
it'll be
this
done.
show airs, I know it will be done.
But we will still collect the bags. If you put them in those lawn or leaf bags, we'll still collect them there. And the drop-off center over by the Public Works Field Operations facility is still open. We'll still do that.
Okay.
I know a lot of people like doing that anyway, but I think most of the leaves are gone, but there's
still some hanging on.
still hanging on.
Although after today's wind
That's
and
what we're
yesterday's wind and what's still projected to come tomorrow, I don't know. Winter preparation, it's knocking on our door. They're saying as early as this Saturday we're supposed to have some snow. Not that it will last, but how are we set for the winter driving season with snow or brine or whatever it is that you guys put down on the road?
We are all set. I'm going to pay a visit to Public Works, the new field operations facility. You saw the big dome, the salt shed there. We're going to be consolidating eventually all our salt there. We still have a little bit left in the old county garage that we've been borrowing from. We have a new brine system which essentially helps mix salt with some wet brine to pre-wet it to accelerate the melting. Our salt shed's full. Our brine system is operational. The blades are on the snowplow trucks. Bring it on. We're ready, and I'm so proud of those guys. The last 2 years, they've been, imagine when you're remodeling your house and you're still trying to cook dinner and do this and that. Yep. That's what Public Works has been doing for the last 2 years. They've been building and moving and building and moving, and we're reaching the end of that. But the salt shed's ready to go, and I'm very proud of the work that Kevin Ewan, our field operations manager, and all of his staff have been doing to kind of get used to each other in one new building, and all the work that they had to do to get the building up and running, as well as continuing to do all their work.
Sure. So let me ask you this, and this is kind of a fun question, but why is the salt shed dome-shaped? You see these down in the southern part of the state and in Illinois in a lot of places. Why is it dome-shaped like that?
The way I understand it is it's better for preventing melting and things like that, because the salt, I have a bag of salt in my garage from last winter that I didn't finish, and it just gets all melty and everything. This prevents it from getting too melty.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. And I wish we had a lot more time because I've got so many questions.
Time flies.
I know, and I'm still on the first page, but I want to try and get to this real quickly because this is major. We've been undertaking a lot of interviews and meet and greets with potential candidates for the new police chief, and by the time this show airs, the new police chief will have been selected and named. But I was surprised and disappointed by the fact that there was not one single current Oshkosh officer who was in the finalists. Did we not have any applicants, or what happened? And I know a lot of this came from the Police and Fire Commission.
Yes.
But since they're not here.
Yeah, it's an awkward question to answer for the only reason it's an awkward question to answer is the only time we reveal the names of applicants are when they're finalists. Okay. So technically, the only five you know about are the five that are there. But I think some of the people internally that applied pretty much made it pretty known that they were interested in the position. But the Police and Fire Commission, by state law, Police and Fire Commission selects, and I think they felt that they found the most 5 qualified applicants. I think we had some very qualified applicants. I think Chief Groyle spent a good deal of time grooming them. Fortunately, some of them are pretty young, and there's going to be opportunities. And I would say that I think the Police and Fire Commission picked the 5 people that they felt were the most qualified. And now the process is to winnow that down to one person. I think they need to do some due diligence to get the last of those 5 whittled down to 1. And I suspect that by the first of the year, Chief Groyle plans to retire January 8th. I suspect that we'll have a chief on board by then. But we have got there's background checks to do, psychological exams, all sorts of things that have to occur. But I think we have a very good police department, and I think that there are a number of people who are certainly qualified to be chiefs, and I certainly hope that they have an opportunity to do that sometime in the future. I've got a great deal of respect for our command staff. It was funny, I had a seminar that I was invited, a webinar I was invited to participate in, and it was about police staffing and things like that. And so I said, Chief, why don't you bring the command staff over there and bring anybody else that you think might be interested in the position. And the candidates who were interested in the chief's job were there, and I was very proud of that. And
that's great.
So they care about the department, and they're pros completely. And I think anybody would be disappointed if they applied and didn't get it. But they're pros. They're going to do a good job for whoever that new chief is, and hopefully prepare them again so that they can move up.
And did I misspeak because as I understood it, the chief was going to be decided on by the 20th of November. Is that not true?
Well, once we have to start doing due diligence now that we, checking out the backgrounds, and we have to do all those things before we can make a formal offer. So we're on track. We're on track.
So they probably have someone in mind, but all that other stuff has to bear out.
Yeah, they have to make sure all those things are okay.
So we're not going to hear a name tomorrow?
No. You're probably going to hear it, I would say it's probably going to be a couple weeks. We're trying to do everything we can to get it done as quickly as possible, but the real reason is the darn holidays. That screws up everything. Because trying to schedule somebody to come and do a psychological exam and schedule all these background checks, literally we knock on doors of the candidates' neighbors. That's
good. I mean, we want to know that kind of due diligence has been done.
And people don't answer the doors at the holidays.
Well, that's true. But you look at recent events in the news with officers who have been brought on forces who have been dismissed from other forces because of psychological problems, temper problems, and that kind of thing, and yet they somehow get hired somewhere else. So I'm glad that the city is not just saying, well, you've passed psychological exams for your own department, so that's good enough for us. We'll just check that box off. I mean, I'm glad to hear that you're taking it to the next step. One thing that I was thinking about, because a lot of people have brought it to my attention, and there people out there are talking about it, and they're concerned that whoever is selected may not respect, I guess, the level of community policing that Chief Groyle has worked so hard for in the time that he's been chief. It's been, I think, a great thing that he's done. And I, too, am concerned that whoever's selected might not feel the same way about community policing or about openness and, being so candid with the public. I mean, right now we've got newsletters that go out to citizens about the types of crime that are being committed and the police calls that are being made. We never had that under any of the other chiefs. And I think it would be a real disservice to the citizens to have those kinds of things go away. Can you speak at all to that? I mean, is that an important thing that we're going to be able to expect from our new chief?
The continuation of team policing, community policing, is probably the top of the list for the Police and Fire Commission. They held a listening session, and you could have been there with what you just said. That was overriding the issue that was very important. I know that with police chiefs in general, you need somebody who's going to be a leader of men and women, that they'll be willing to risk their lives for that person and the people that they serve. And that's certainly important. But right after that is somebody who cares about community policing. And I sat on one of the panels, screening panels. I was the technical peer panel, but we had a community panel, and we also had an employee panel. Everybody was, are you going to continue to Chief Groyle's legacy? I think when all is said and done, when Chief Groyle's epitaph is written, it's going to say he began community policing in Oshkosh, and everybody else who will be taking credit for years from now should go back and trace it back to Scott Groyle's legacy. I really think you're going to see that continue. And I think Scott even recognizes that he laid the groundwork. The next person's going to take it to the next level. There is no going back on this. And certainly
that's
I'm committed
a relief to me, and I'm sure to those who are watching or listening. Will be very, very pleased to know that. Just when Chief Groyle was on the last time, and I plan to have him on for sort of a farewell show, the first show in January before he retires. And I told him the last time he was here that, I have such respect for the man, as I do for you, because he truly has I think, turned around the image of policing in this community. And I think that you have helped to turn around the image of City Hall, because in the past we've had city managers who weren't as transparent with the public, and after all, the public is paying your salaries.
That's right.
You know, and it's just good to know what's going on, you know. And his slogan of "Know us before you need us," that's so simple and such a common sense approach, and yet it's brilliant because it says it all about what our police department is. And that should go on his tombstone, you know? Know us before you need us, because, and I say that in jest, but it is what he's done. And so I really hope that the chief that is selected will continue with that. I've got just a couple of quick questions, and we're almost out of time here. What is this, well, the website address had changed for the city some time ago, so we've got that squared away. I think most people know what that is now, but there is something out there called Opportunity Oshkosh, and it's opportunityoshkosh.com. Just real quickly, can you tell us who that is, what it is, who runs that website? And
that was an initiative that was initiated, that was started by the Chamber of Commerce on a marketing campaign that they had talked about. I think it's a little bit on hiatus, trying to get some focus on that. That's probably more of a question for the chamber.
Okay.
What we've been working on most recently is the launch of the Greater Oshkosh Economic Development Corporation.
Go EDC.
Go EDC,
Yep.
And they have gotten both public and private sector funds, and the private sector outnumbers the public sector funds, and that's what it's supposed to be about. So we're really moving forward with making and designating Go EDC as the city's official economic development organization, so that people know from the outside who they should contact, letting the state and other regional economic development folks know that you want to contact Go EDC.
Okay.
Jason White's the new director of Go EDC.
And he's been on.
He's been on. Well, I missed that one.
He's been on. All right.
And Jason will be
Thanks so
great.
much. Yep.
I'll be back.
You will. You will. Happy Thanksgiving to you and happy holidays. And, you know, we'll have you on again. But that's going to do it for this episode. Happy holidays, happy Thanksgiving, and you take good care. We'll see you next time. Until then, keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.